This is a 1999 Suzuki RM 125. The task at hand is to get the carburetor out, cleaned up, and put back on. It's really not that hard, but if you've never done it before, it can be a bit of a challenge. First thing I like to do is free up anything that's holding this thing down. That's the wiring for the solenoid. And then there's a little clamp down there, and that's just holding on some hoses, overflow hoses. Then I like to go for the top cap on the carburetor. That's going to pull out the slide. So when you pull that out, be careful. That little needle's very delicate. You don't want to bend that guy. Kind of set that to one side. And then what's next is these clamps. There's a couple of clamps holding the carb in, one on the left, one on the right. Airbox side, manifold side. Just loosen them off, back them off. You can take them off if you want. I just loosen them. And the idea here is you got very little space. Look how tight that carb's sitting in there. If we could only pull this airbox back, it would free everything up so we can pull that out. And all these peripherals out of the way, it should be no problem. So there's one thing, there's a couple bolts holding this subframe on that. One on the bottom left, one on the top center, big long one there, and then on the bottom right, there's another one. That's it. Other than this little bolt here holding the exhaust can on, and there's really nothing to it. So if we get that bottom right one off, and then the exhaust clamp off, and then go on the other side, we can remove that one on the left side. And then we can go for the one on the top. Once we slide that top one out, look, just gets all loose and you can pull that whole subframe off. Nothing to it. And look at the access we got for that carb now. See the whole thing? The only thing holding it is the one clamp at the front there, or that boot. Snap it out, feed those hoses through, and there you go. Look at that. So, there we go. Now you can see how tough that would be with airbox in place, all that subframe there, the tank. Pretty tough, right? So if you can, get all that stuff off and pull it out that way. It's just so much easier. Let's get this thing in bits and clean it up. Okay, now one of the first things I like to do is take pictures of everything. So I've got an overhead camera going here, and I want to get every angle of this thing. There's one side of the carb, there's the airbox side, there's the other side, and there's the intake side against the engine. And then no harm in looking at the bottom. You can see how those cables come up through the bottom. They're not cables, hoses. And then take a look at the top. So we got a good reference to how this thing's set up. We'll get rid of all these hoses first. First one I take off is the gas line. And then these other hoses. The good idea to get rid of these hose guides. It just makes it so much easier to pull them through. Just pull them off. Look how supple these hoses still are. These are original and they're still fairly supple. Even got the original tapes holding that form on those hoses there. So I'm going to leave them on. I'm just going to clean them up like that because we're going to use all these original hoses. And they all pull off nicely, as you can see. Next up is this thing here. So there's a guide holding on that, what is that, a power jet solenoid. Let's just spin that guy out, break it free. That's a 17 mil wrench, and that's what that thing looks like. Let's get rid of the cable guide. It's just a single bolt. Next up is the choke. That thing's made of plastic for some reason. 14 mil wrench, be careful. Spin that out, that's what that looks like. And what's this? Okay, so the idle adjust screw, just spin that guy out. Don't have to worry about where it's set. Now there's an air scoot. We do have to worry about where that's set. So let's count. Half, 1, half, 2, and just over 1/4. So 2 1/4. That thing is set at 2 1/4 out from buried. We do want to remember that. Let's write that down. 2 1/4 turns. That's important to remember. So we got that locked in. So now we can pull that guy out. Just back it off. And we pull it out. See, this one only has a spring. Some will have an O-ring and a little washer down there. This particular year only has just that spring, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, flip it upside down. There's an access cap here. That allows you to get access to the main jet without having to take the carb off the bike. Look how grungy that is. So let's get the bowl off. There's only a couple bolts holding it on still. Get rid of that. Shock it free. Let's get that off. Okay, you know what? That's not too bad. It's a little grungy in there. Look at that greenery. Yeah, not liking that. Okay, so let's pull off the floats. There's just a pin there. Pull that pin out. Frees up the float. And that thing can just pull out. You can see how that little float needle's dangling on that hanger there. So be gentle with all of that, especially with the float. That's a very delicate bit. So let's take a close look. Look at the grunge in here. Little flakes of green stuff. Yeah, that's why we're giving this guy a good clean. So let's pull off the main jet. I think that's a number 6 socket. Okay, that guy's out of there. And then we got the pilot jet sitting down in there. And that guy's gonna be grungy for sure, so get that guy out. Yeah, that's what that looks like. Now, if you don't have an ultrasonic cleaner, it doesn't matter. You can still clean this up by hand. But I highly recommend if you have access to one, that'll do the best job you're ever gonna see. But like I said, if you don't have one, not a big deal. You can still do it by hand very effectively. Okay, so my method is just dip a jar in there and start feeding all the little bits into the jar. But you can do it all by hand, just with some brake cleaner and a toothbrush. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Now, I'm not gonna throw in the floats because they're gonna float. I'll clean those by hand. If they had a hole and one side leaked, it would be obvious. You could hear it because it'd be full and it would sit uneven in the water. So we'll clean that one by hand. Okay, so this is where I seal up the jar and I just drop those bits into the cleaner. There's only 3 major components doing it this way. There's the body and then there's the bottom. Contact. In the meantime, I'm just gonna go clean up this float and wipe down this little solenoid here. Get ready to put this thing back together. All right, here we go. There it is. We got all the bits cleaned up. Everything's out of the ultrasonic. I've dried everything, blown all these lines clear, gently, of course. You gotta be careful when you're putting compressed air in there. But everything's dry, ready to go. And yeah, let's get this thing together. Oh, one thing I forgot when I showed taking this thing apart, there was one jet that I missed, and it resides right here in the main body. This little guy, there was a jet right in there. That's a power jet. And the circuit runs like this. If you look where it connects, so it's a power jet, so it's a hole there. It also lines up with this little hole right here. So when you line those up, now you see that this circuit here, right here, lines up here, which is where the power jet solenoid goes in. But it also connects to this pipette, this thing here that goes right in the middle of the venturi. You think, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, if you turn it around and you look here, you can see that that pipe is actually cut right at the end by about a 1/4 inch. It's sliced. I don't know if you can see that. About a 1/4 inch of that pipe is sliced. So the idea is when that power jet solenoid opens up here, boom, it allows fuel to come out of the float bowl directly up here through this circuit. And because this is open now, right into that pipette, and it dumps fuel right there. So it's a pretty neat feature to be aware of. For a little clarification on how this thing actually works, I thought I'd check out the manual and see what it had to say. And it actually sums it up nicely in this paragraph right here. Fuel flow through the power jet is controlled by the power jet solenoid. The CDI unit at a preset high engine speed activates the solenoid. When activated, fuel flow through the power jet is interrupted. When engine speed is reduced back to mid-range throttle position, the solenoid is turned off and fuel is delivered through the power jet. The system allows for more precise jetting of the slow jet, and high, main jet speed circuits. Okay, the results are improved throttle response and an increase in low and mid-range torque. All right, that sounds good. Now we know. Having said that, it all relies on this power jet solenoid working. So we got to test that. Basically, it's just a 12-volt connector right there, and all you got to do is put 12 volts to that. So let's do it. Got a 12-volt battery, so that's working. Okay, good to know. So we know the power jet solenoid works. So now we can get to the business of putting this thing together. Let's start with the easy stuff. Let's pop in that actual power jet, one that goes in right there. That's this little guy. Look how tiny this thing is. Look at this thing. That is one tiny little jet that goes in right there. Power jet, good. Next up, let's put in the main jet. That's this guy right here. That spins in and just a 6mm socket. Secure that guy. Now we'll go for the pilot jet. That's this little guy here. 9 times out of 10, this guy is going to be the one that clogs up on you. Drop it in place and just snug it down. Nothing to that. Don't forget to oil everything though. All right, what we got next? Oh, this little float needle. Take a close look at this. The tip is made of rubber, and if yours is deformed or weird, you got to replace that thing. And then you can just slide it onto that little hanger post, that little hanger there in between the floats, and drop it into the seat. And then all we got to do to secure it is slide in that axle. That just pushes in. Goes in pretty easy, actually. Okay, and that's how it works. When you look at the thing from the side without the bowl, you can see how when the float goes up, it'll move that needle and just cuts off the overflow. Now pay attention to that little pipe there. When you're putting this float bowl on, it goes in at kind of an angle like that. All right, let's secure this thing, and don't forget those little hose guides. Make sure you get them in the right spot and snug everything down. All right, that's the bowl. Now we can go for the choke. Remember, oil everything. I'm not showing it on everything that I put in, but remember, do it on all of them. Snug it in place. This is, again, I don't know why it's all, the body of this thing's plastic. That's a 14 mil, so be careful with that. There's the idle adjust on with the spring, and just slide that in there and wind it in. We can set that once the bike's running. There's the air adjust. Okay, now, remember, slide on the spring, oil it up, and this one is very particular. You got to have that exactly at the right setting. So remember, let's refer to our pre-reference there. 2 1/4 turns out, so that's half, 1, half, 2, and just over 1/4. So 2 1/4. Perfect. And that's what it looks like when you look at it from the airbox side. Okay, check the O-ring on that cap. Put that on the float bowl, snug it in. That's a 17. And there's another thing I forgot. There's a float bowl drain bolt, and that goes right in there. It just allows you to drain the float bowl if you ever have that bike sitting for a while, but whatever. There's the circuit for that. That's where you attach the hose. Okay. All right, let's go for that power jet solenoid. Oil it up, snug it in place, just spin it down. And I think that's a 17. Yeah, that's a 17-inch wrench. Just tighten it. You don't have to be too hand-fisted. And then put the cable guide holder on there. Okay, what do we got now? Yeah, you know what? I had to readjust those hose guides. I put them on the wrong spot. So then it's just a case of snapping in your hoses. And because these are pre-bent, it's pretty easy to see where they go. Just follow the bends, stick them in. If you're putting new hoses on, just adjust accordingly. Don't forget to put your clamps on. I'm using all the original factory hose clamps, so they fit nice. Everything's good. This looks pretty good. That's it. It's done. It's ready to put back on the bike. So I'm not going to waste your time showing you how to reinstall this carb back on the bike. It's pretty obvious. Just do it in the reverse order that you took it off. Simple. But there is one thing I do want to show you, and that's this, the gas line. Replace it with a clear plastic line and put an inline filter in. It'll do the carb a world of good, keeping that extra filtration, and that's a good thing. All right, I got stuff to do. See ya. Have you ever wondered what your bike says about you? Well, check out this video right here. You might be glad you did.